Ever get that like weird feeling scrolling on your phone and bam, an ad pops up? Something you were just talking about, almost spooky. Like, how do they know? Well, today we're going deep on Edward Bernays. This guy, he practically wrote the playbook on that kind of thing, making you wonder how they know.
Right.
We're digging into his whole deal, his writings, his methods. How's this stuff still affecting us today? Heavy, right?
Bernays is a fascinating character, truly. When all this mass media stuff was taking off,
Brand new, right?
he saw it not just for information, but to really influence people.
Yeah.
On a huge scale.
No kidding. We're talking capital I influence here. Forget jingles. This is shaping how people think, what they do.
Yeah, and what's wild is this is Sigmund Freud's own nephew.
Oh, yeah, I read that.
Talk about insider access. He took those cutting-edge theories about the mind, the unconscious,
Things we don't even realize are going on.
and basically said, let's apply this to talking to everyone.
Whoa, hold on. So he was like the OG master manipulator. Psychology meets like mass marketing.
Kind of. Bernays was onto something. People, we don't always act logically. It's our hidden desires, the fears.
Stuff we don't even admit to ourselves sometimes.
He saw that as the key. Tap into that, you can shape what the public thinks.
Okay, but HLW. Don't tell me he invented subliminal messages or something. Was it that simple?
More complex. See, he knew people are swayed by feelings. More than logic. Often.
Makes sense when you put it that way.
He called it engineering consent, making people feel like they're choosing.
Even though you're kind of guiding them there all along.
Exactly.
Okay, now this deep dive is getting a little creepy. So how do I even know if I want something? Or if someone's, like, put that thought there?
$1,000,000 question, right? That's what we're going to unpack. One way to get Bernays is through his campaigns. The Torches of Freedom thing, for example.
Oh, yeah. That was, what, getting women to smoke? Wasn't that taboo back then?
Big time. But Bernays, he saw a huge market. Untapped. So he cooks up this plan.
I'm guessing this wasn't some quiet ad campaign?
Oh, no. Picture the 1929 Easter Parade, New York City. Big deal. And then young women right there lighting up cigarettes.
Bold move. On purpose.
Oh, yeah. Publicity stunt. Big time. He's not just selling cigarettes. He's creating an event.
Part of this engineering consent.
You got it. Bernays knew give them a story, something to aspire to. He called those cigarettes torches of freedom.
So smoking equals what? Women's liberation? Rebellion.
Bingo. The media ate it up. Overnight, smoking, it's not just a vice, it's empowerment.
Wow. He took this desire for social change and used it to sell cigarettes. That's something else.
Genius, right. This wasn't about logic, it was about tapping into something deeper.
Kind of scary how well it worked, to be honest. So he wasn't just selling the thing, he was selling the idea behind it, the image.
You got it. And this was no fluke. Bernays used this for everything. Think Palmolive soap, for example.
Hold up, was washing your hands suddenly rebellious too?
Not quite, but close. Back then, soap was, practical. You used it. End of story.
Right.
Bernays sees an opening. He connects this simple soap to, get this, beauty, romance.
Because using soap means you'll be more successful in love. Come on.
Exactly. He understood you gotta weave your product into people's desires. Make them think they need it.
To be happy, to fit in. It's like creating a need where there wasn't one before. And this is before social media, targeted ads.
It is pretty amazing when you think about it. And this wasn't just about selling stuff either. Bernays, he had a hand in politics too. Big time.
Okay, now that's what I'm really curious about. If you could do that with soap, what happened when he went into the political arena?
Well, World War I is a good example. Intense, but interesting how he used these skills there.
I'm all ears. What did he even do during the war?
They hired him, the U.S. government, to get the public on board with the war.
Seriously. The cigarette guy is now in charge of public opinion on a war. How does that even...
It's wild, right? And his methods, effective, but raises some questions. About propaganda, manipulation, in a democracy. Whole other conversation there.
So how did he pull it off? I mean, convincing a whole country to go to war, that's...
Bernays knew wars, they aren't won just on the battlefield. It's the people. You got to get them behind it.
Hearts and minds, right. So was it all just like super patriotic slogans, trying to scare people?
He was smarter than that, more methodical. He actually created this thing, the Committee on Public Information.
Okay. What was that?
Basically a giant propaganda machine, newspapers, magazines, posters, even films.
Wow. They weren't messing around. What were they even telling people?
You went all in. Stories, pictures, anything to make the enemy look bad. The war, it had to be this righteous fight for freedom, democracy, the whole 9 yards.
playing on people's fears, but also that sense of duty, right? Like, we got to do this.
Exactly. Bernays was big on storytelling. Knew that to get people fired up, you needed a good story, something they could believe in.
Well, the U.S. did enter the war, so I guess the story worked. But isn't that kind of messed up, using these tactics for something as serious as war?
It's tricky, right? On one hand, you see how powerful this stuff is. Public opinion, it can be swayed on a huge scale. But then there's the other side.
What could be that bad about a little persuasion?
Well, those same techniques, they could be used for things
Mm-hmm.
not so noble. Think commercial interests, for example.
Oh, okay. So we're moving away from wartime propaganda to, what, selling more soap?
In a way, yes, but also things get a lot more complicated. One of the big ones, people still talk about it, his involvement in the Guatemalan coup back in '54.
I've heard of that, but refresh my memory. What exactly happened?
Basically, you have the United Fruit Company, big business in Guatemala. They wanted to get rid of the president, Jacobo Arbenz, who'd been elected democratically.
Well, so they hired, like, the father of PR to pull off a coup. How does that even work?
Sounds crazy, right? But it shows you how much influence Bernays had, and how these methods in the wrong hands.
Yeah, that's some scary stuff. So how did he even begin to convince people to overthrow their own government?
Same playbook, different game. Bernays, he always came back to the story and understanding what makes people tick. He needed people scared, needed them to see Arbenz as a threat.
And what was the story this time?
He made Arbenz out to be a communist. This was the Cold War, remember? Everyone was terrified of communists.
Even if he wasn't really a threat, Bernays made it seem that way.
You got it. It was all about tapping into the anxieties of the time, creating a crisis, basically, so the United Fruit Company could get what they wanted.
And he used his media connections to spread this story, right?
Exactly, and it worked. The U.S. government, they bought it, supported the coup. Arbenz was out in Guatemala. They dealt with the fallout for decades.
That's heavy. It's like selling soap with these tactics is one thing, but this affected a whole country.
Exactly. It shows you the two sides of Bernays. Brilliant, influential, but also, you got to be careful with this stuff.
Did he ever, like, realize that? Have second thoughts about what he was doing?
It's hard to say. Some people think he was blinded by his own success. Too busy shaping opinions to see the consequences.
Just caught up in it all.
Maybe. Or maybe he was just a product of his time. Back then, this was all brand new. Mass media, how to use it, nobody really knew.
It's a lot to process. But one thing's for sure, Bernays changed the game. Yeah. Communication, influence, the media. Nothing's been the same since.
And it's more relevant than ever, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. We are bombarded with information these days. Messages everywhere, and who knows what their real agenda is.
Okay, so what do we do? If Bernays' playbook is still being used, how do we not get played? It's like he handed us this whole instruction manual for the information age, but like ripped out the part about how to actually use it safely.
That's one way to put it.
So are we just like stuck with this, destined to be manipulated? What do we do?
We're not powerless, but got to be proactive about it.
Okay, Al.
Awareness is key. The more we get how these techniques work, the less they work on us.
So, like, be super critical of everything we see, read, hear.
Absolutely. Question everything. Who's the source? What do they get out of it? And how are they making you feel? That's a big one.
Right, because if you're feeling tricked, you probably are. But how do you even know? It's not like there's a warning label made with Bernays' tactics on everything.
True. This is where, like, media literacy comes in. Gotta train that critical eye. The language, the images, how it's all presented.
So we're all detectives now, looking for clues in the matrix.
Basically. Is it all emotional appeals? Trying to sound super official? Or are they making it feel urgent? Like, gotta act now. Those are red flags.
Using our own emotions against us, that's kind of messed up.
Which is why we gotta be aware. Feel that strong reaction, good or bad. Take a beat. Why are you feeling that? Is it real, or is it the message doing that to you?
Good point. Like that saying, too good to be true, probably is. Same here, I guess.
Exactly. Overly angry, scared, hyped up. Someone might be playing you.
Okay, I'm getting this, but it's a lot. How do we even filter all this out?
Takes time, for sure. But mix up where you get your info. Don't rely on just one source, one news site, whatever. See what other people are saying, even if you disagree.
So you don't get stuck in one way of seeing things.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to be a little skeptical. Just because it looks official doesn't mean it is. Check sources, do your own digging, and if it's too crazy, too good to be true, probably is.
This whole deep dive, it's been wild. I feel like I've learned not just about Bernays, but like how the world actually works now.
That's the thing about knowing this stuff. You see it everywhere, and it changes how you see everything.
So what's the biggest takeaway here? What do you hope people walk away with?
Knowledge is power. The more we understand about persuasion, how manipulation works, we're stronger. We can think for ourselves, make better choices, not be so easily swayed.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So
Yeah.
next time you're online, watching TV, even just talking to someone, remember Bernays.
Ask yourself, who's trying to convince you of what and why?
And are you going to let them? That's our show for today. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Stay curious out there, and until next time, stay vigilant.